All right. So with that, I'm pleased to welcome today's topic of OpenStack operators discuss the life with OpenStack. And the conversation got started with Mike Lowe reaching out and kind of starting this dialogue to us, and it's developed into the form that it is right now. But we're really excited to have them come and share their experiences and kind of have a conversation with us about what they went through getting started with OpenStack. Mike or Julian or whoever else, if you guys want to do more introduction, I'll kind of turn it to you or just let you proceed as you would like to.
I think what I'll do is I'll introduce myself last, but I'll let each of our panelists introduce themselves, starting with Jace.
Hello, my name is Jessini, and I am a early career OpenStack operator and user of the OpenStack infrastructure, but I am a mid-career systems engineer, sysadmin. I am over at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications, NCSA, as many acronyms, and I have only worked on the current OpenStack infrastructure within NCSA called Radiant for 1 year. And my experience has been with the OpenStack version of Yoga. We have a lot of different types of users, and it's kind of a choose your own adventure kind of playground scenario.
I'll go to Mike Lowe next.
Hi, I'm Mike. Let's see. So, this all started with, I've been doing this for a decade, ask me anything. And I've been a HPC-ish sysadmin for 20 years now, at Indiana University the whole time. We got involved 2008 in hosting things that didn't fit on batch systems, and was doing that all by hand. And around about 2014, I was asked if I thought OpenStack was usable and ready, and I said, well, last time I looked at it, absolutely no way. It's hot garbage. We can't do this. But let me look again. And things had progressed enough where I said, yeah, I think we can keep going. We can make a viable pitch with this. And that turned out to be Jetstream 1. So we partnered with TAC at UT Austin. That ran from 2015 to 2000. Let's see, 20 out here. What, 2022? There we go. So that ran for 7 years. We had the follow-on Jetstream 2, which I'm sure you'll hear about ad nauseum here, but that's set to run for a few more years yet, and we're starting to look forward to maybe being invited to do Jetstream 3. So that's me.
Right, and next, Aaron, also from IU.
Folks, I'm I guess my background was typically sysadmining single systems or large or smaller high availability systems. I took over the old hardware from Jetstream 1 and made that into a new internal cloud called Research Cloud, where we typically host infrastructure and support various teams inside research technology for their computing, specifically cloud computing needs. I'm also secondary on Jetstream 2. And I guess if we're talking OpenStack versions, my first OpenStack version is Antelope. So I came in after it apparently got good. And hand installed that with apt. So that was a fun experience. Very, very fun to do and learn a ton of it. So anyway.
Right. And thanks, Aaron. Next, JP Robinson from UAB.
Hey, I'm John Paul Robinson. I have been with activities at UAB related to supporting research for a good long while, from departmental to central IT support to now exclusively focused on campus-wide research computing. I got started with Openstack back in, I guess I first really took the bait back in 2013. My boss at the time had gone to a conference in December of 2012 and came back and said, "Hey, I heard this guy from DreamHost talking about OpenStack and Ceph, and then talked to Dell, and they had something going on with it as far as an early technology adoption." And so in the spring of 2013, we kind of launched our first venture with OpenStack and Ceph at the time. And it was Essex and Bobtail, for folks familiar with that, deployed with Dell Crowbar at the time, a solution that was based on Chef. Then we had that pilot for a while, and then moved on to a kind of a re-envisioning of it with an integration with HPC. And that was deployed via Bright Cluster Manager at the time. And now we've gone to a full-on production support for our research computing, kind of as a side-by-side with our HPC and other platforms. So officially supported with OpenStack and deployed via the canonical engagement and a Juju, I guess it's called Charmed OpenStack. So we've got that going on now since I guess we started that deploy in 2020.
Great. Thank you, JP. And next is Clyde, our final panelist, Clyde McClung, also from the University of Alabama at Birmingham.
Hi, I'm Clyde McClung. I'm a systems analyst here at UAB. I'm primarily on our OpenStack. I've been in research computing for 4 years. Before that, I was in central IT at UAB for 3 years. So one of the first things when I got started here was us deploying this OpenStack cluster, and it became, I was primary on it from the beginning. I'm also primary on a few associated Ceph clusters. One of them, well, actually both of them being canonical now. We moved from SUSE on 2 of those. Let's see, I'm secondary on our HPC, and we also have a almost identically configured hardware-wise Kubernetes cluster that I'm also secondary on. OpenStack versions, we started with Usuri, and at some point we upgraded to Yoga, which is what we're on now. And I think that covers it.
Great, thank you very much. So a little bit about me. I do not manage any OpenStack infrastructure. I am a research software developer at Indiana University, working in the research cloud services. So I've been working with OpenStack for 9 years, since 2016. First at Cybers at the University of Arizona, and then helping support Jetstream 1, mainly on the application side, user interfaces to make it easier for researchers to use OpenStack, and also helping researchers use cloud computing at scale. One of the co-founders of the Exosphere project, which is a nice, friendly user interface, which is used by Jetstream as their primary user interface, and some experiments in some other institutions. So sometimes Mike will let me restart services on Jetstream, but mostly I stick to the application side, which is why I am a moderator, because I always have lots of questions for these folks. So let's get it going. I'm going to share just a couple of rough slides, and then I'm going to start asking some questions. But also, please ask questions by maybe typing them into the document, and then I will read them and sort of combine them with questions that I already have prepared. Okay. So let's see. So this all works. So these lovely panelists are from these three institutions: University of Alabama at Birmingham, Indiana University, and University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I have worked with them for a while. This OpenStack has come along a lot since we first started working. There are many good things about OpenStack, and also some things to be aware of. So bring your questions and your burning desires, what you would like to know, how does it interact maybe with traditional computing workloads. As Mike and Aaron mentioned, these are the systems that we have at Indiana University, but also with satellite clouds at 4 partner sites, with the 5th potentially coming on board soon, and the internal research cloud, which I also help with. Then Jess from NCSA, lots and lots of course they're supporting their clouds there. Sorry, I've been told. And then University of Alabama. They have multiple clouds there. Sorry, apparently my Zoom windows are kind of all over the place. So I will stop sharing, and then we can go into the questions. By the way, these slides are also linked from the document that is here. Let me see. So these here we have slides linked and our bios at the bottom. And I think we have, questions. Here we go. So we have some of our first questions, but I'm going to preempt this and I'm going to ask some of my own questions that I already have prepared. Some of the more basic things, maybe to help people started, is what is OpenStack actually? So Jess, if you don't mind having a go, your understanding of what OpenStack is, and then anybody else who wants to follow on from that.
So my understanding, especially in the scope of one year of OpenStack, and how I try to help others understand it, is it is an on-prem AWS. So in terms of scope, it's very large. And so in terms of operating it, it can be a lot of effort. But it is on-premise, non-commercial, open source cloud computing.
So how is it, maybe, and it's for some of the other folks on the panel, how is it from if you've used other cloud computing systems, how is it similar and how is it different, besides the fact that it's open source and then you can host it yourself? And maybe compare it with other open source tools that are out there.
I guess something that I'd add into that conversation is, from the user's perspective, absolutely an AWS work-alike kind of platform, Azure, Google Cloud Compute, anything where you've used, commercial services where you can deploy virtual machines and allocate storage and stuff. OpenStack has a lot of projects that are associated with it, but the commercial clouds will have a lot more products that they have ready out of the box, where you can consume, MySQL servers and other kinds of high-level application abstractions, and just kind of start where you are at. Typically, that doesn't come out of the box with OpenStack. There are projects where you can add that in, and different OpenStack deployments have different open source projects that are included, and the maturity of those projects varies. So you have to kind of look at it from that perspective. It's just like any other open source application from that perspective. But the core functionality of virtual machine storage and networking is rock solid in OpenStack. And so what you're really getting is a virtualization platform that you can really shape your infrastructure around and kind of reimagine how you deploy your infrastructure with it. So, and it's just my plug for what OpenStack is to me. It's an API into infrastructure.
Okay, so it's always catches people off guard. OpenStack doesn't do anything itself, right? So it is all orchestration that wraps up and presents those infrastructure APIs for other services, LiveVirt, QEMU, Open vSwitch, OVN, Open Virtual Networking, Ceph. I don't know. What are some other backends here? I think they've deprecated Zen. You can still use VMware. There's, I don't know, half a dozen different storage vendors you can plug it into. All sorts of stuff, but nothing OpenStack itself actually does anything. It all orchestrates front ends, coordinates other open source projects, and well, some closed source stuff too.
Okay, nobody else is going to jump in there. Okay, so if people have more questions about details of OpenStack, feel free. So the next sort of introductory question that I have here is, how is your OpenStack deployed and who are your vendors? Let's start with JP.
So we've had a number, as I mentioned in the introduction, a number of different deployments of our OpenStack with different vendors. Today we use Canonical, so a charmed OpenStack, and that's been we've done professional engagements with Canonical to do the deployment, so we're not just running kind of on our own. And those engagements have been useful to us because they've both augmented our kind of our workforce for what is typically a pretty heavy lift when you go to build your infrastructure. And then, of course, we have a support channel for when issues come up. We can turn to the vendor to help us support that. And with Canonical, one of the reasons why we went in that direction is because Ubuntu has always had a very aggressive kernel schedule so that they can track what upstream is doing more readily. And so it's been a good pairing with OpenStack and the modern infrastructure that we want to use within that platform.
Jess, how about you?
So with NCSA, we currently have a Cola Ansible managed OpenStack infrastructure. We're actually currently looking towards trying to search around and see more opportunities out there, such as the Stack HPC, well, excuse me, not Stack HPCs, but the KOB that will be placed on top of Cola Ansible. But charmed OpenStack is also on the table. But at this time, it's the free open source Cola Ansible.
Somebody from IU wants to talk about their vendors. And how is it deployed?
Yeah, I can talk about the Research Cloud real quick. So since it was my first OpenStack deployment, I decided to do it manually via apt and walking through all the documentation. That has its pluses and minuses, we'll say. You definitely learn a lot more about how each individual system works and how they all interconnect, and the best way to troubleshoot and get your hands on physically on like the config files and such like that. But it is also can be very time consuming and um, and not to well, I'll just say this. The documentation, especially for new technologies, I specifically rolled OVN, Open Virtual Network, as our network-based layer for Research Cloud. The documentation at the time of install was just not great. There was a lot of reference architecture, but not a lot of documentation of being like, this is how you actually do it. You kind of had to infer from the reference architecture and such. But I did learn a ton during the install. So
Mike, I think you have a slightly different story for Jetstream.
Sure. So, you know, I did the same thing just 10 years ago. And as I was doing it, I built up salt states. I like SaltStack over Ansible. I spent far too much time waiting for PDish on a 1,000-node cluster to not do to ever do PDish, and Ansible, you know, kind of follows from that. So yeah, I've carried these salt states forward that basically sort of documented and evolved my hand install process into, you know, an automated thing, but deployed on the 600 nodes. There's about 3,500 daemons or so running. So it can get way out of hand very, very quickly if you don't have some sort of config management. But yeah, I've carried that forward. I don't know. It's probably hubris. I've always thought the vendors were a little, they didn't know anything better than I did, and they certainly weren't running clouds at scale. So I was better off just going off on my own.
All right. Any other panelists wanting to chime in on how you deploy OpenStack and your vendors?
Yeah, I'd like to speak a little bit about ours at UAB. You know, we use Canonical as a vendor. You know, JP described it for the most part. First of all, Canonical is great. Their support and their field engineering are second to none. They're wonderful. I have nothing but good things to say about them. The way OpenStack is deployed is we use MAS to manage the hardware, and you know, to deploy and manage the hardware, and we use Juju, which is part of the, you know, charmed OpenStack. So Juju is a framework where you have charms that are basically Python wrappers around the actual application. So say, for example, the actual compute service for OpenStack Nova, it will have a Nova charm that is wrapped around the actual application. And so you can use Juju to say, hey, deploy this machine with this, you know, this criteria from MAS, and it deploys the bare metal machine. And then you can say, okay, I want a Nova application on this machine. So you can put it there, but you say, okay, we also have OVN networking. Well, these Python wrappers, the charms, they have built-in interfaces between these applications. So you're basically saying, you know, Juju config, whatever the config value is, set the value, and the charm then takes it from there and sets everything up. So it's a learning curve because you have to learn, you know, the Juju framework. But it makes things a lot easier, and things kind of make more sense because the config is all kind of not in one place, but it's all in very like standard places, right? So if I want to know, you know, how we're configured, I'll go check, you know, the Juju charms. It's intended for the most part for all of this to be ephemeral infrastructure. You know, you delete a charm or you're having a problem with something, just delete the charm, you know, bring up a new one. but or actually in that case it would be called a unit, but that's not completely the way it goes. There's a lot of we've done some network changes and things like that, and a lot of times that'll get put in as kind of not config management. So let's see, I think that's all I had to say on that.
Okay, so we have well, I've got you, Clyde. Kubernetes is a thing that happened since OpenStack became a thing. And I think I don't know how many other folks on the call work with it. It may be a good indication just as a thumbs up on the reactions for people who work with Kubernetes or need to work with Kubernetes or want to work with Kubernetes or have been told to work with Kubernetes, or maybe are Kubernetes refugees. Maybe they've used Magnum on OpenStack before. So just give a thumbs up in the reaction so we can get an idea of how many people. So what is the Kubernetes story with OpenStack? Should you choose Kubernetes instead of OpenStack? Should you use OpenStack instead of Kubernetes? Can you use both? Tell us about what Magnum is and your experience with container orchestration. Maybe starting with Clyde, and then other folks as well.
I actually don't have much experience with Kubernetes. We actually have one of my colleagues is primary on that. I help out on the Juju side of that, because it's all deployed via the Juju framework as well. So I'll help with that. But my colleague John is the one who normally handles that.
I'll jump in a little bit to just provide my 2 cents on how I view that world. Kubernetes is amazing, and it's a great process orchestration framework. OpenStack is amazing, and it's a great virtual machine and infrastructure abstraction platform, right? So it depends on what you're trying to get out of your platform and what kind of applications you're trying to support. The reason why we continue to go with OpenStack is because a lot of the applications we're trying to bring into both centrally hosted campus infrastructure and just into a more, let's say, modernized research computational platform. These are applications that folks in the research field are familiar with. They are often wrapped around traditional server deploys. They just work really well, and the understanding is really easy when you're talking in terms of, I have a server, I put this application on top of it, I do this other thing with it, and then I run it on the internet, right? When you go to container orchestration, you're introducing a lot of really new technology and a lot of power with that. But you need a potentially much longer runway to migrate or adopt tooling into that platform. And all these container deployments are, I don't want to say they're different, but they have different assumptions around what's provided and what's not provided by the container orchestration platform. So it takes, from my view, more effort for a lot of people to go into that direction. So we're kind of seeing this as a stepping stone. I definitely see Kubernetes as part of the picture, but I see it as a separate part of the picture.
Right. Any other panelists with some insights into Kubernetes on OpenStack or alongside? So, we can come back to this. Sorry, go on, Chase.
No, it's so I don't have experience about the recently stable OpenStack Magnum, which is the Kubernetes OpenStack component. The experience that I have is actually at NCSA. We have a research programmer that set up a Kubernetes kind of templating process that is specific to our Radiant OpenStack. And that is where I fall in as a OpenStack user, is that I manage it's a lot of abstraction layers on the OpenStack infrastructure. It is a Kubernetes cluster that has Jupyter Hub, and recently we've also we're going to be rolling out VS Code associated with it, and that is managed by Terraform and Argo CD and Rancher as the primary setups of things, and then the usual Helm and such. And I will say that I'm looking forward to learning more and playing around more with the OpenStack Magnum component and seeing how it differs. For sure, it does require a lot of understanding of all of those various abstraction layers, and it can you can find yourself in the weeds very quickly.
Agreed. Yeah. I'm actually using OpenStack Magnum again for the first time at Jetstream to help deploy scalable Jupyter hubs. And 2i2c just released a blog post yesterday about using OpenStack Magnum on Jetstream 2 for their managed Jupyter hubs for communities. So I can post a link to some of that and some more resources for people who want to know. But let's go a little bit more into the people side. So I know a little bit on the inside, but only at the teams I've worked with. But how large of a team does it take to build and maintain a deployment and of OpenStack? And how do you divide the work? Who wants to go first?
I'll go. Let's see. We can you can do it with one person. It hurts. There's no vacation. Machine's always running. There's always stuff to do. There's so many moving parts. You have to be a network engineer and a storage engineer and a regular sysadmin, and then do the virtualization. You do a lot of stuff, but like it's broken down into pieces. It can be manageable. You're gonna touch a lot of unfamiliar stuff. You'll make mistakes and muddle through it, but yeah, it can be done. We just brought on a third sysadmin, I don't know, just in time for the holidays, just in time for everybody to leave on vacation and leave them to his own devices. But yeah, so now we're more comfortably staffed at like 1.5 per cloud. So we can trade around a bit. And I don't know, dividing up the work. I mean, it's seems to be like people tend to gravitate towards things they like, right? So I've been in the data center far more than I care to. So like I'll let Aaron and Nathan go ahead and take the hardware stuff first. I'm there to back them up if they need it. But I tend to do more deep dives into like patching. Julian, I just cherry picked that Magnum patch. So we might actually have a working Kubernetes on OpenStack now, maybe deployment service. But that's what I tend to gravitate towards. But that's still evolving. We'll see how that works out. I don't know.
How about insights from UAB about your team and how you divide work?
So I just want to comment on one of the things that Mike was sharing, which I think is really important, is that it's you really have to see it as a different way of looking at your infrastructure, because it's a very, I'll say cloud-like perspective on infrastructure. You will be concerned with virtualization, you will be concerned with storage, and you will be concerned with networking. Those are the characteristics of unifying those kind of capabilities inside of an open cloud environment, right? I mean, it's just a different way of looking at infrastructure. So just be prepared for that and be open to it. And I think it's very exciting because it allows you to start to look at these as, horizontal layers that have integration in between them. As an individual, you gotta have to concern yourself with them all. There's no way around it. But it's well packaged. And so the isolation between those layers, as you become comfortable, you'll be able to say, okay, I'm having a problem with my storage. This problem is not over here in my networking or in my virtualization. I've always, I guess, let's say the first and the most recent deployments have been with a vendor engagement, and so we haven't had the inhale that it takes to install the platform, but it still requires, managing it. When we did install it with the Bright Cluster Manager, it was effortful, and, just like you do with anything new that you install it several times before you know that you've got it right. But with a vendor component to it, there's always at least some sort of support outreach for that. As far as dividing up the work, I thankfully hired Clyde, and he was very interested. As Mike said, people gravitate towards things they enjoy, and I'm glad that Clyde seems to enjoy this work. At least he hasn't not enjoyed it yet. Well, I mean, we all not enjoy our work sometimes, but the point being is that it's very helpful when you have more than one person. So we're now, growing our staffing where we have 3 folks in the operations team. I often do backfill in different areas as needed for those activities. But I'll let Clyde speak to specifics of being overloaded with demands.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to highlight Jeremy's comment in the chat here to do not do it with one person. I think what Mike said about I guess he was kind of about the skill set is that, I think that's something we're all kind of touching on is it does require the kind of person who isn't scared of jumping into storage, compute, and networking. I came from the corporate world before I came to UAB, where, if you're a network engineer, that's the only thing you're ever going to touch. Same, server engineer, they only touch servers. And that's something I like about, UAB is, or being here, that I'm able to do all of those things. But you're going to need, the kind of people who don't mind getting their hands dirty in things they wouldn't necessarily normally be doing from day to day.
And
I
just real quick,
Yeah,
if
go
I
on, James.
could, I just wanted to make sure to mention that, especially with OpenStack, because it is such a playground, that for sure I highly recommend that while you have the operators of the OpenStack infrastructure, having a strong user support team is very important, because when you have so much freedom to do whatever you want, it's good to have some guidance on where to go and what to do.
Yeah, and I want to just shout out that point loudly that Jess just brought up. Clyde and I have been speaking from an operator's perspective. We have a science engagement team that has done a superb job of writing documentation and spending time with our user community, so that frees us up to focus on the platform itself, right? And so we can really be concerned about the concerns that we should have, which is it working? Is it scaling? Is it responding? All those kind of other things, without also having to attend to, how do I use this thing?
Sounds good. So one of the questions somebody wrote into the Q&A is, I'd like to hear stories, good or bad, on migration from VMware and challenges that came from the process. And related, how did administrative time change with VMware migration? More, less, or more enjoyable, maybe? Any of the panelists who have any experience with VMware?
I can, so I can say we've had a few tickets come in, saying I'm leaving VMware. I have my image. Can I actually use your stuff? And the answer is sure. Just convert it to a raw format, upload, and you're done. More or less, like it was more of a, it was a non-issue for the users if they could get their images out of VMware to move to Jetstream. Yeah, that being said, we didn't have a VMware cloud. We're funded by a competitive proposal process with the National Science Foundation. So, license fees for VMware don't make us competitive. We can't win a proposal that way. So yeah, we don't have any direct experience, but we hosted the Open Infra Day North America, the first one this summer, and we had, let's see, 36 submissions, and at least 6 of them were on for talks, 36 submissions for talks, and at least 6 of them were how to move from VMware to OpenStack. So we just sort of globbed them together in a panel, and each one of them had a different method, different story. They all worked. Some were commercial, some were end users who had done the migration, but yeah, there's many ways to slice this. Just depends on I don't know what you're comfortable with, whatever works first for you.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to that too. I migrated away from VMware ESXi type platforms to OpenStack back when we did the first adoption for the proof of concept in 2012. That was our background, as we were using ESXi, individual ESXi servers, kind of in a KVM-like way, right, where you have different hypervisors, so more direct hypervisor engagement. The benefits that came with the OpenStack platform, or let's say the differences between the VMware platform, especially at that era of VMware, I don't know all what's there nowadays, was this combination of the user experience of the virtual machine, the networking, and the storage. OpenStack really kind of exposes that to the end user and lets them control that. So it's very empowering, right? A lot of times in the, I guess, my casual experience with the VM world is that these components tend to be licensed separately and at great cost. And so they don't often get deployed always. And so you don't always have NSX virtualization for your network in a VMware farm. So that's something that I think is a big advantage to an OpenStack transition. Just to note on the transition from images in a VMware space, from an end user perspective, into an OpenStack space, I would say that certainly the image can run in OpenStack. A couple of areas where you might look at is just and this may not be so much of an issue today, so I don't have any, last few years of experience in this, is that your some of the driver profiles may be a little bit different. So you might want to consider your network driver. That might be pretty common nowadays for Linux boxes. Windows may be a little bit different. But also because OpenStack is kind of cloud oriented, you've got all your deployment information. Like you deploy an image and it gets its configuration from OpenStack via a boot time configuration and initialization perspective. Some of that stuff in a traditional hypervisor environment, you kind of manually imprint onto your image. And so that's a difference in how you might deploy images from more traditional hypervisor space into OpenStack, whether it's VMware or KVM or something that's just a traditional virtualization platform.
Thank you, John Paul. I know that we're getting close to time, but I wanted to also, one of the more important questions here, what advice would you give an OpenStack novice to direct them on how to best get started and get up to speed? Communities, resources, training, etc. Jess, you are, it's probably still fresh in your mind, and you probably know a lot more than most people about how to get started. So why don't you kick that off?
It definitely depends on the type of person. I don't recommend this methodology for everyone, but I know that many people have had this experience of coming into a project that has already been going on and just kind of jumping in and being like, what's going on? Why is this like this? What's this? Oh, I just broke this. Okay, I need to fix it. So that's been my personal experience. It's just been jumping in and trying to maintain infrastructure that's there. But I will say that specifically for everybody that doesn't need to go with the flooding method, I would definitely recommend a similar process in terms of with Kubernetes. You can have on your local machine, you can simulated infrastructure that is smaller scale and just trying to figure it out, very similar to what Aaron and Mike were speaking about. And actually, personally, I'm actually thinking about trying to pursue one of the Mirantis boot camps, so that I can have that opportunity as well. But let me find the link for it. I know we had posted some of the options were things called DevStack, MicroStack, and PackStack. I can't speak to this personally, but those have been things that I've I've heard in murmurings. But the biggest recommendation that I have is getting to find the wonderful community that is, especially the people in this panel. The OpenStack community is very warm and welcoming and happy to share ideas, and the Open Infra events have been very, very helpful. So my recommendation is dip your toes in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I think I'll plug the OpenStack Scientific Special Interest Group. They have a Slack, and we can post an invite link to the notes here for people who want to find like-minded people who are in this world. You'll find contacts and more resources there. So yeah, thanks, Jess. I will post some links for the things you mentioned. Some of our other panelists, ideas for how to start, resources, training.
I personally, when I was preparing to interview for my job that I have now, I knew there would be some OpenStack involved, so I used a MicroStack, and I think that's a canonical distribution of OpenStack that all fits on one machine. So I basically just ran it in VirtualBox on my Mac, and it was a very easy way to at least get familiar with OpenStack and the services, because it's all pretty contained in a small place, and you just have it on one VM. I will say, and I was kind of thinking this earlier, that the skills that are used to manage OpenStack are the same skills that are used to manage things like VMware and HPC and all that. Like all the basic building blocks are the same. You're just using them in a different way. So.
Unless the hosts are going to tell me to stop talking, I'm going to keep talking. So anybody else in our panelists for resources, how to get started?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say that new things are always frightening. Certainly, anytime I adopt a new technology, it's like there's lots of unknowns. One of the things that definitely trying it out and kind of getting a little bit familiar with it, but you'll learn most by putting it in kind of in your way to success. And so I think that that's a really important aspect to, adopting something like this, because you'll learn a lot about how to incorporate and change your habits in whatever way you need to by actually using it to solve your own problems.
So I should give a plug for our trial allocations, right? So come try out ours, right? Pretty sure everybody on the call is entitled to use access resources, and we're a access allocated resource, so you can sign up that way. We have tiny trial allocations, so you can go kick the tires and see what it's like to be a user.
Thank you very much for that reminder. I'll put a link into that as well. Okay. I will hand this over to the hosts, and they can ask further questions if people have last-minute questions. I think we're past our time, so feel free to head off. Brian, is that correct? Or do we have a bit more time?
No, this is a good time for us to be wrapping up. I kind of want to put maybe Mike in the hot seat for just a second based on an element he brought up at the beginning. So first, kind of asking you guys who have presented and contributed your time to this, if there was appetite from the community to want to go deeper into some area here, is that something we could reach back to you guys on and schedule a time for?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about any of this. So anywhere, anytime.
Okay. And then the plug to the audience I would make, and more directing it to the call doc, is if that interests you, down at the very bottom, there's like a suggest a new topic. Feel free to kind of throw something in there, capturing what you would love to hear more about. It'll really help us kind of interact with all the presenters here and others to try to get some things queued up as time permits. So with that said, I'd really like to extend thanks for all the time and effort you guys put together getting prepared for this, and sharing the information you have. This has been great. And I thank everybody who's been on to attend. So with that, we will wrap things up. So you have a moment to hit the restroom before your next meeting. And we will post the recording kind of in the normal path later, and give a link on Slack, both on the CARC as well as on SysPros, and we'll also add the link to the call doc if you just want to look at that later as well. So thanks again, everybody.
Very much. Yeah, and thanks to the panelists. Thanks for hosting us.
Thanks.
Thanks, y'all. It was awesome.